can we? So everyone wants to. Tom wants to be all pissy pants over here because I'm talking about Vladimir Putin.
Tom's been quiet for a while.
Good. That's why we're doing well today. Now Tom, relax. We're joking here, guys.
You know what, dude? Sometimes you're like France. You're like France. You're a member of NATO, but you're a pain in the ass to everybody else.
The PBD podcast got very heated when discussing the whole Putin-Ukraine situation and multiple other situations as well here on the PBD podcast. Patrick Bet-David was forced. Adam forced his hand. He had to put Adam in his place because the things that Adam was saying here on this episode are just so woke and so insane that Patrick Bet-David was forced to put his co-host in his place here on the PBD podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel. Let's get into this clip here where things got very heated here on the PBD podcast and Patrick Bet-David had to go after his own co-host and Adam because of just how woke he was being. Let's check this out.
Putin worth $200 billion.
That's my boy.
That's your guy. I know it.
It's my guy.
Unless we hold him to account, he'll keep stealing and he'll keep thieving in this kleptomaniac autocracy that's called Russia. Keep in mind one thing. The president of Russia, pull this up, Rob, pull up salary. The president of Russia makes about $135,000 a year. In America, it's $400,000. You know, right, it was right there. $120,000 per annum, not in rubles. How is someone that makes that amount of money worth $200 billion?
I love that you're bringing this up. So this leads me to one thing. If this is what you really believe about that people who do this, then in 2024 on November 5th, you're only voting for one person. Because that one person is not using the government's money to run. That one person used his own money to run.
RFK you're talking about?
Not RFK.
Oh.
That guy's using...
Nikki?
No, it's only one
Trump.
guy. You know who he is. So, meanwhile, if you want to find that net worth before and after, Rob, if you want to pull up, Obama's, Clinton's, and Biden's net worth before and
Bernie
after.
or Pelosi.
If you can do this would be a great exercise for Adam because I like where Adam's going with.
Any of them are billionaires, I'd be shocked.
Well, if
but
you can,
$200 billion, richest man in the world.
That's the one right there. So zoom in that one right there. So that's pretty interesting. So Trump's net worth before running $4.5 billion. Now it's $2 billion. Obama's $3 million. Now $40 million. Clinton's $500,000. Now $100 million. And then you got Biden's is on that list as well. So, you're kind of interesting the angle and direction you're taking. I didn't think you were going to be this bold this morning with this story, specifically the fact that it impacts America. And the difference between us and them is you're right. In a communistic nation, you can steal more and get away with it because there is less regulation. In a country like ours that there's more regulation, you have to be more deceptive and conniving and more slick to be able to steal money. And you got to give respect if you're saying your value in the fact that you don't like people going into politics and then all of a sudden becoming rich and having houses in Hawaii and paddleboarding. You take a day off, you don't take a day off, and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean that's a very, very good political point you just made right there, Mr. Adams.
You bring up a great point, and I as someone that minored and double majored in sarcasm, I see what you're doing. I respect you. There's a big difference between, and not that I'm advocating, there's a big difference between 40 million, 100 million, and $200 billion.
There's a difference because
it's a principle, though. Like it's the principle of how they're getting the money that they're really discussing, right? It's not about the actual amount of money. It's the principle of the thing. And PBD is correct, but also he's even more correct than I think Patrick Bet-David even realizes, or that anybody on the PBD podcast here even realizes, because they play by different rules over there in Russia. For sure, they play by different rules, but as we've realized over the last few years, especially, we've realized it a ton. It seems like there's been like a singularity of us realizing these things, that we get fed just as much propaganda as a lot of these other countries who we used to laugh at and look down upon because their government feeds them so much propaganda that they view us and other countries in a certain way, and they view their own country in a certain way as well as a result of that propaganda. We are also a victim in America of this same sort of propaganda that we didn't really realize as much until a few years ago, especially, I think 2020 was kind of like the singularity of this, of us realizing this stuff, that how much we're actually lied to. So not only do Russians and Putin and Russia play by different rules than Americans, but also we are fed this propaganda that probably makes Russia and Putin seem a whole lot worse than they actually are. And whenever people like Tucker Carlson go over there and visit Russia and interview Putin, he gets in trouble. Why? Because we're actually getting an insight as to what it's like to live in Russia. We're actually getting an insight as to who Vladimir Putin actually is, rather than just having to take our government and the propaganda machine in the United States' word for it. So Patrick Bet-David is correct in that they play by different rules, but also I think he's a lot more correct than he even realizes because of the amount of propaganda that is fed to us in America.
Here's the real difference, homeboy. The difference is that's a guesstimated. The difference here is this is audited. So
do you question this guesstimation?
Of
From
course
Fox
I question.
Business?
Question
Of
everything.
course I question the guesstimation.